Well, good afternoon, and welcome to everyone that's attending our next session, which is Enhancing SERFF, a superior approach for filing submission. We will begin here in just a moment, but just want to remind you of a few housekeeping items, is that your audio has been muted, but you will have an opportunity to raise your hand and ask questions at the end, or you can post questions in the chat at any time, and then we have staff that will be answering those. Also, at different points throughout the session, a Slido message will pop up on your screen. You want to be able to flip over there and answer those questions because that is how we track attendance for these sessions. We're going to go ahead and get started now. So I will introduce to you our speaker today. Lauren Bandel is a product owner with the Information Technology Group at the NAIC. Lauren has been with the NAIC for 6 years and is responsible for leading internal and external requirements discovery sessions, collaborating with UI and UX designers, and communicating business requirements to the development team. She is currently a product owner for the SERFF modernization project. Now, there's another individual that may be popping up throughout the rest of the session, and that is Bridget Kieras, and she has worked on software development at the NEIC for nearly 30 years, focusing on business analysis, quality assurance, project and project management. And Bridget has led several agile development projects, including a multi-year project to build SERFF's plan management component for health insurance exchanges. And she is now the business lead for the multi-year SERFF modernization project that we're going to talk about today. But we will go ahead and turn it over to Lauren.
Thanks, Renee. Excited to be here to give you an update on the SERFF modernization project. Today, I'm going to go over a bit of the project overview, then give a status on where we are with the project today, and then finally what's coming next with our early adopters phase. So to start with a bit of an overview on the project, if you've seen one of our presentations before, you may have seen this slide before as well. About 5 years ago, we did a business and technical assessment of SERFF, and we were thinking about whether we wanted to do a modernization project for SERFF. And the results of that assessment were that, yes, we needed a modernization effort, and the reasons for that were in these 3 drivers for change. And a lot of what we were hearing from our users during that assessment was that while SERFF did what it did fairly well, there was a desire for more operational efficiency, less manual work, more of the analysis work, both on the filer side and on the reviewer side. Sometimes we refer to it as letting the knowledge workers do the knowledge work. So building in tools and capabilities to help with that efficiency. Also, in the insurance space, the products are becoming more complex and more innovative, and so SERFF needs to evolve as well to be able to handle the submission and review of those more complex products. And then finally, the underlying technology of SERFF hasn't had a major upgrade in quite some time, and it would have been very difficult to build in those new and improved capabilities and tools on the existing architecture. So that underlying technological architecture needed an upgrade as well. In the modernization project, we are planning to bring many key feature improvements to the platform. So I want to go over what some of those will look like. The first, we really want to streamline filing creation. Again, trying to help bring some of that efficiency, bringing more validation up front, but also starting from the very beginning and helping streamline even the filing wizard. We were able to achieve a lot of that with the compact filing wizard that is already in production with their compact filings. Some of you may remember the compact wizard in Legacy was 13 to 14 steps and had hundreds of checkboxes that had a manual decision made. Now that wizard is 2 to 3 steps with only a handful of options that the filer needs to make before that draft filing can be created. So really wanting to start off the filing process with a lot of efficiency, a lot of automation and back-end processes being used to help create those filings faster. We've also added a new feature into draft filings called the pre-submission check. This is a check that our filers will be able to run as many times as they would like to on a draft filing. And the pre-submission check has two sections, warnings and errors. The errors will be very familiar to our filers. A lot of them are pulled from the existing submission errors that they see today when they're trying to submit their filings. Things like if you haven't satisfied or bypassed all of your supporting documents, or if you haven't put anything in a required field like the filing description. So the error section is for items where if it fails one of those errors, then the filing cannot be submitted at all. The warning section is new, and this is for items where the system will technically allow you to do it, but we're pretty sure based on our knowledge of the data and talking to the users that it might be a mistake. We've started with just a couple of warnings in the system, but plan to grow this section and anticipate that this will be the section with the most growth and things added as more users get into the platform, they start getting more familiar and have ideas on what they would like added. The two that we started with, the first is for missing forms. So these are for filings that have the form schedule tab, but haven't had any forms added to it. In talking with users, we're fairly confident that if the filing has the form schedule tab, forms are probably required or should be on the filing, but we have heard of instances where a filing is accidentally submitted without their forms, and that causes an early amendment letter or a response letter after that filing has been submitted. So there is a warning where if there are no forms on the filing, but you will still be able to submit that filing without forms if that is the correct behavior for that filing. But what we're doing with the warnings is that we are also tracking when the filings are submitted with these warnings in place. And that helps give the SERFF team the data to understand how the system is being used and allows us more information to be able to make improvements in the future to better provide you with the information that you really need on the filing and help kind of that streamline and efficiency. The other warning that we have added is an excessive fees warning. Again, we have heard of scenarios where maybe a decimal point has been put in the wrong place in the past and hundreds or thousands of dollars extra was submitted on accident. That's a pretty costly mistake, and we know that a lot of our states do not give refunds. So we've done some research, looked at the data, and have come up with kind of what it seems like is the higher end of where those fees usually sit. We've set a threshold, and then if any single fee is over that amount, you'll get a warning, just to take a second look. Now, again, if that is the correct fee amount, you'll still be able to submit your filing, but that will allow us to get information about the fees, and especially as we get into the automatic fee calculation, if that excessive fee amount is being, that filings are being submitted with that warning in place, that gives us information about where we might need to tweak those fee rules in the future. But hopefully helping our filers avoid some of those early mistakes. Kind of going hand in hand with the pre-submission check, we are also working on business rules and fee calculation. A lot of what we're working on is to help bring as many validations forward into the draft filing as possible so that the filings are submitted as compliant as possible. And one of the kind of low-hanging fruits of filing validation that we wanted to add are the business rules. These are for things like field validation in the general information tab. So for example, take the effective date. A lot of states have rules around what their effective date has to be, how many days in the future has to be, etc. But today, that information is probably in a state's general instructions. So the filer has to read the general instructions, interpret that correctly, and then put the right date on the filing. That has a lot of room for manual error there, and it's a cause for early objections and post-submission updates. And we feel like that is something that the system should be able to validate for you. So we have added in a business rules configuration on the regulator side, so they'll be able to build in their rules. So again, with the effective date, if a state has a rule where the effective date has to be at least 60 days in the future, they'll be able to build that rule in. And then when the filer is in a draft filing, if they try to add a date that is 45 days in the future, or even 59 days, again, just a simple manual error, the system will give you an error right then, validate that, won't let you submit with the wrong date. So really helping to avoid some of those early objections and post-submission updates. We started with just a couple of fields for our first phase with the compact, but we'll look to expand on that as we move more users and do more rollouts. We also are building in automatic fee calculation. That's something that's been requested for quite some time. And after seeing how complicated some of our state's fee rules are, we understand why. Our goal for the first round is 80% coverage of fee rules. And so there may be scenarios where a state's fee rule is particularly complicated. And in that case, on the filing fees, those will not be automatically calculated. There will be still a self-calculate option where you'll have to manually enter those fields. But we also recognize that there could be one-off scenarios or edge cases where a broad fee rule may not apply. And so there will also be an override button where filers will be able to override the automatically calculated fee and enter in a different fee amount and then give it an override reason. Those overrides will also be tracked to not only give the regulators the information about why the fee is being overridden, but also to give our team knowledge of where those overrides are so we can better tighten up those automatic fee calculation rules. We want SERFF to be very customizable, and we're starting that with the dashboard. So the dashboard is the landing page where when you first log in to the system. And there's a filing section on that dashboard, and we've made a couple of changes here to make this dashboard customizable. The first is something that has also been requested for a long time, which is column customization. So every user will be able to select which columns they want to display with their filing list, because we know that not all users need to see the same data points for the filings in those list view, depending on their roles. So you'll be able to set those columns. Those columns also stay set, so you'll be able to set them once, and then when you log out, log back in, those same selected columns remain. We also have filters face up on those columns, so you'll be able to filter down those filing lists if you want to search for something specific without having to go to a separate search page. The tool that we're using to build the new SERFF platform is a low-code tool called Appian. It's Appian if you want to look it up. One of the good things about Appian is it comes with a lot of different modules that we can very easily plug into the application to use. And one of those is that we are using in SERFF is the task management module. This is a good module because it has tasks, and those tasks will create a to-do list. Tasks have an assignee, they have a due date, they have a priority that can be set. So it really allows for a body of work for a particular user to be kind of shown all together, face up. In a prioritized list, you can get a clear view of what's coming up to do soon, what is a higher priority, and you're able to be confident that you are getting your work done. Tasks can be created a couple of different ways. The first is by an action taken in the system. So for example, if when an objection letter, today we call it an objection letter in Legacy, is submitted, that would generate a task that was created for the filer to let them know that there is something to be, an issue, some objections, something that needs to be addressed on that filing. So there are a couple of different scenarios where we have implemented tasks that are generated based on actions taken in the system. The other way that tasks can be created are ad hoc manual tasks. And those can be created for a number of different reasons. You can create them for yourself if you want to set reminders and create a task and assign it to yourself. You can also create a task and assign it to somebody else. So if you have let's say you're working on a filing and you're not quite sure what you're seeing and you want a colleague to take a look at it, you can create a task related to that filing, assign it to that colleague and give it a due date and a priority, and then that task will show up on their task list. So they're able to see those requests for collaboration and maybe secondary review along with all of their other work and be able to prioritize it. So we are hoping that this is a tool that helps bring more collaboration and into the SERFF platform, as well as helping our users see kind of their body of outstanding work together and are able to better track the status of that work. Now, we have made quite a few changes to the filing, review, and amendment workflow, and so I want to talk through a few of those changes. The first is a terminology change. So in SERFF today, in legacy system, we have objections that are added to objection letters, and the objection letter is then what is submitted to the filer. In the new SERFF platform, we have changed that terminology to where now they are compliance issues that are added to compliance reports. So if you hear that terminology, compliance issue equals objection, compliance report equals objection letter. The other big change that we have made is that we have combined all of the different ways that the filers make changes to a filing post-submission into one amendment workflow. So currently you have amendment letters, response letters, post-submission updates. There are quite a few different ways that you make changes. And we had heard feedback that having all of those separate avenues for change meant that it was a bit more difficult to onboard new users. There's a steeper learning curve, but it also made it hard to keep track of changes that were related but had to be made in different ways. Keep kind of the context of those changes together. So we have combined all of those different methods of change into one amendment workflow. So now, as an example, if you needed to make a change to the policy form and then also make a change to the filing description, you would be able to make both of those changes in the same amendment at the same time. So we're really hoping that helps, again, bring efficiency, helps with training new users, and helps keep the context of changes together. The last change here that I want to mention is that we have also allowed some greater flexibility in how our filers respond to compliance issues. So today in the legacy system, when you receive an objection letter and you're going to then create a response letter to respond, you are required to respond to all of the objections that were in that objection letter in the same response letter. And we know that has caused a bit of a pain point in some cases. Sometimes the filers aren't ready to respond to all of the objections, but they want to respond to some of them. And so they send the response letter, but they don't have all their responses in there. And that causes more objections that need to be sent again. And it can cause a bit of a back and forth where sometimes the context of all of those objections gets lost. So in the new platform, we are now allowing our filers to submit amendments for compliance issues related to individual items. So as an example, if you received a compliance report that had compliance issues for the policy form and for one of your supporting documents, you would be able to create an amendment that just responded to the compliance issues related to the policy form, submit that amendment, and then create another amendment that just responded to the compliance issues for the supporting document. So we're hoping giving that flexibility to the filers decreases the amount of back and forth, because filers will now be able to get things that they know the response, they know the changes, maybe get those out of the way, versus maybe some more difficult changes or some things that need to be sent to a different department for discussion before those changes are made in SERFF. Now, there's a couple of caveats to this flexibility that I want to share. The first is that you will not be able to respond separately to compliance issues to the same item. So using that same example that I gave, if you had multiple compliance issues related to the policy form, you would not be able to submit an amendment responding to only one of those compliance issues and then send another amendment responding to the other compliance issue for the policy form. If you're going to respond to a compliance issue for an item, you need to respond to all of the compliance issues for that item at the same time. The other caveat is that we will, just because you will be able to respond gradually does not mean that the reviewers need to review those changes gradually as well. The SERFF status will not change back to pending state action until all outstanding compliance issues are responded to. And some states and departments will make the decision to not start reviewing any of the changes until all of the changes have been submitted and that SERFF status flips back. So we're hoping this change provides a good balance with giving a little bit more flexibility to the filers while also allowing the regulators to do their review process as they would like. And then the final improvement that I want to touch on is self-service user management. We get thousands of user management requests to our service desk every year. And while it is a load on our service desk, it also takes turnover time for those requests to be fulfilled. And so we really wanted to make an enhancement to our user management feature where if you have the user admin privileges, you're somebody that does that work, you will be able to add your users, change their roles, and deactivate them yourself in the vast majority of cases. So that not only will take the load off of our service desk, but it also decreases that turnaround time. You're not waiting on for those requests to be fulfilled. You're able to do that work on your own. All right, that was a lot of information about some of the features that we want to bring in the new project. So now let's give a status of kind of where we stand with the project today. So these are our major project milestones. I mentioned that initial business and technical assessment of SERFF. That was completed in May of 2020. Then we issued the initial RFP for the pilot phase of the project in November of 2020. We officially started the modernization initiative in March of 2022. And then we had our first launch to production with our compact filing. So that was for our compact filers, compact staff, the compact member states, and our NAIC staff that supports them into production in March of this year. Now, a lot happened in between these big dates. For example, we did make some changes to legacy to improve that advanced filing search, particularly around that document text search. And then we also added some more reporting options with the introduction of Tableau dashboards. So a lot happens, in between these dates, but those are our major project dates. And this is where we are, what we've been working on since the initial launch. We've been very busy, really working to improve usability. We have received a ton of great feedback from all of our users that are currently in production in the new platform using it on a day-to-day basis. And so we have been working with them to make enhancements, big and small, whether that's new features or just little UI tweaks to make the system more usable. We've also been correcting any defects. So we've been very busy addressing all of that feedback, and we are grateful for it. We also have been providing some really great customer service to our users that are in production. It's something that we're very proud about, the level of support we've been able to provide our users. We have a team of staff that monitors help desk tickets and an email box for the project. And I don't know how many times that we'll get an email from somebody that says, hey, I'm having trouble with with this certain area, and the response is, let's get on a call. When are you free? So you can share your screen and we can walk through it. And that has been really great one-on-one support that we've been providing, because sometimes there's a defect and we've been able to see that defect, really identify it, and communicate that to the development team. But sometimes it's just been a filer that is using a new workflow. There's a lot that is different about the new platform. And so there is a lot of learning that needs to happen. And it's been really great that we've been able to walk users through new workflows to get them comfortable, to show them how the workflow works and get them more comfortable using the new platform. So the level, kind of the white glove, first class level of customer support is something that we've been really proud of with this project. And then finally, we have been addressing performance. Some of you may remember that we were initially planning to go live with the first launch in November of last year, and that got delayed until March. And one of the reasons for that delay was because we weren't happy with the performance in the application. So we wanted to take some time to address those concerns. But even after the launch, the performance still wasn't where we wanted it to be. That was a lot of the feedback that we received from users was about performance. So we've just finished a period where we've really focused on performance. And while there's always room for improvement, we've seen that we've been able to cut those response times in half in most cases. And so we're glad that we took that effort to make even more performance improvements, and will continue to do so. So that's what the development team has really been working on since the launch, but getting ready to start looking at the next phase, what comes next in the project, which is our early adopters phase. Now, this is a pivot from where we initially planned to go next. So if you remember, our initial next phase in the project plan was going to be, after the compact, it was going to be all of the life annuity and credit business. And we learned a lot through the compact rollout, through the development and talking about the compact, and then the training and the rollout. And one of the things that we realized through that rollout was that going from just the compact with their, it's one regulator, and it's a relatively small user base, relatively small filing volume, to then going to all 53 jurisdictions that use SERFF for life annuity and credit, and all of those filers, and that, a much larger filing volume. Next is probably not setting us up for success. We were optimistic about that. So we decided to pivot our plan to, instead of doing all of life annuity and credit next, we switched to an early adopters phase. And this comes from the product adoption curve. So in product adoption curve, you have an initial innovator. For us, that was the compact. They are very experimental, very excited, willing to take risks, willing to work through failure. And that the compact was a great innovator partner for us. The next step on that product adoption curve is the early adopters, which is a slightly larger but still pretty small group of early users to transition over. So we've identified 10 states for our early adopters phase. With these 10 states, some of them will bring all of their business over. Some will just bring one business type or the other. So some states will only do P&C, some will only do life annuity and credit, life annuity and health, but with all of these 10 states, at least one of their state instances will be moving over as part of this early adopters program. To give a bit more information about why we decided to do the pivot, we started with service. I talked about how proud we are with the level of customer service we've been able to provide for our users. And we were really concerned that, again, kind of having that massive jump in the users from just the compact to then all of life annuity and credit, we wouldn't be able to provide that same level of customer support and customer service. So scaling that down to just those 10 early adopters will help us be able to provide that same level of service. We also found it very helpful with how closely we were able to work with the compact during their phase to understand their business rules and their business needs, to really work very closely with them during that process. And again, we're worried that if we went just from the compact to then 53 jurisdictions, we wouldn't be able to work as closely with all of those states to really understand their needs and bring as good of a product to them. There was also a concern about the complexity of the migration. This is another area that we are very proud of how it went with the compact. We have had no major issues with the data migration for the compact. And that was because, again, we were able to really dig into their data, identify the anomalies, talk with them about how they wanted to handle those anomalies, really were able to kind of get in the weeds of that. And the compact is a relatively new user of SERFF, so their data isn't as old. But as we start talking about the states who have been using SERFF for much longer, The further and further back we get, the weirder that data starts to look, because we have enhanced SERFF over the years. And so we want the migration to go just as well for our states as it did for the compact. And again, it was a concern that if we were doing 53 jurisdictions for life annuity and credit all at one time, we wouldn't be able to provide that same level of detailed analysis on their data to be confident we could be just as successful. The next reason was around feature richness. So some of the reasons why these 10 states were the 10 states that were selected is because of how their state instances are configured in SERFF today. And a lot of it has to do with the features that they use and the features that they don't use in SERFF. So a lot of them don't use some of the lesser used features. And because of that, their feature list, their MVP feature list, minimum viable product, is what we mean by MVP. And the list of features that they absolutely need to have in place before they can transition to the new platform is smaller than it is for some other states. So limiting that list of required features for this first phase allows us to delve much deeper into those features to really give them a lot of attention, but it also allows us to move more quickly in, they'll be able to get out into production faster, start giving us that feedback that the compact staff and their filers have been giving us that we value. And in terms of also moving faster, if we had to wait, we're doing all of life annuity and credit, then everybody would have to wait for the couple of states that use state paper filings or the couple of states that use state data retention. So, limiting it to these 10 states allows us to build a really good base of feature functionality and then continue to add on to that with new features as we bring on more states. And then finally, learning and refinement. I mentioned that we learned a ton in the compact phase. And we wanted to, we've refined a lot of our process for rollout and communication and training, through the learning that we've done. And we want to continue to be able to learn. And so by, shrinking that list of, into the early adopters, it allows us to continue to learn with each rollout, refine those processes. And so it is smoother for users in the future as well. Now we start talking about the next phase of the project. The first question we always get is, when is it coming? When are we going to move over? And our answer is, we don't really know yet. Part of the reason for that is that the early adopter states will have input into when their go live date is. So as we are finishing development, as we're working with the states, as they're doing their training and testing and they're getting more comfortable, we'll get to a point where they'll feel ready and we'll set a date. We have committed that the release date, that for the release date, we'll give at least 30 days notice so that the filers and the staff and everybody can be well prepared for that go live. But it also means, because it'll be a discussion for the states, that a lot of these states we are anticipating will have different transition dates. And so that's why we don't have a firm idea of what this timeline is. We anticipate having a better idea in Q1 of next year, as we start getting some of these early adopter states into production. One of the downsides of this pivot to early adopters is it does mean that more users will be operating in both systems at the same time, what we've called coexistence in the past. And we understand that that is a pain point, and there is a concern there about confusion between the two systems. So one of the things we've also committed to as part of this early adopter phase is that we will be adding messaging and tools to both systems to really help guide users and to understand what they should be doing in one system versus the other. And on the next slide, I have examples of some of those changes that will be coming to the legacy system. And then finally, outside of the early adopters, then the next question is, okay, when are the rest of the states going? What's those next steps? And again, we don't have any firm ideas yet, but how the early adopters go will really inform those next steps. So we're hoping to have a better idea of the longer term roadmap, again, near the maybe the end of Q1 of next year. We also are still considering, what strategy we take after the early adopters. If we're continuing to follow the product adoption curve, the next group would be what's called the early majority. That's probably another 20 to 25 states. So we go that route. We're also considering a one out, one in plan. So as an early adopter state gets out into production, another state comes in and starts working through the process. So it's definitely still kind of considering what our plans are, but that early adopters phase will really inform those next steps and how our longer term roadmap looks for the rest of the project. Now, I mentioned changes. So these are some of the changes that we know about that will be coming to legacy as part of early adopters to help ease that coexistence period. The first is change to the filing wizard. So we will have messaging in the filing wizard to notify our filers about which instances or business types for states have moved to the new platform. So it is clear to you, what you're doing in the legacy system versus what you need to go to the new platform to do. We'll also be making a change to filings, and this is the same change that we made to compact filings after they were migrated over, which is after a filing is migrated to the new platform, that filing will become completely read-only. So no changes made to it, but the filing also will have a message banner that says that it's been migrated over, explaining that that's why it's read-only. So you'll get information if you're looking at filings that have been migrated. You'll know why you can't make any changes to them, where they are and where you need to look to view that filing and any changes that have been made to it. And then the last thing is not so much a change, but just a notification that with reporting in the legacy system, you will still be able to run reports in legacy, and those reports will still include the filings that were initiated in legacy. So if they were migrated over, they'll still be included in your reports. Now, when a filing is migrated over to the new platform, that filing is essentially frozen in time in legacy. Any changes that are made to that filing in the new platform are not then transferred back to legacy and applied in the legacy system. So very quickly, that data in legacy will get stale, especially on those open filings that are in active review. But if during the migration or right after the migration you need to run reports, those reports will still include those legacy filings, but any of the data in those reports related to those filings will be kind of where that filing ended in legacy before the migration. All right, before we move into Q&A, I just wanted to touch on outreach and communication. So we understand that the outreach and communication is critical to the project's success. But we also understand that since the launch back in March, we have been really focused on our users that are in the new platform, and the wider spread communication to the larger SERFF user base has not been as prevalent. And so while we have been heads down, and we had those post-launch priorities we talked about earlier, we've been really heads down working on that. We feel like we're getting to a point where we can start, picking our head back up, and we have a renewed focus to expand that outreach to the larger SERFF base, because we know that we need to start communicating again about what's coming, how to get ready, what you should be looking forward to, because we really want to make sure that everybody is well informed about the status of the project and what's happening, because it is going to be a big change, the transition to the new platform, and we don't want that to be a surprise to anybody. We really want everybody to be well informed. So we do have a renewed focus, and keep an eye out for some of those wider spread communications and outreach. We also have a project email box, SERFF modernization questions at naic.org. It's maybe the longest email address I've ever seen, but this is a place where you can send any questions you have about the project, any feedback that you have. We welcome all of that. We also have a SERFF product steering committee. This is a great place to stay up to date on the project and provide input. It's a monthly call that's open to everybody. We always provide an update on the project. We will sometimes have then a focus in a particular area if there's something that we want to share or if there's been a request. And then we always have an engagement activity at the end. We use a survey tool that allows us to get input from a large group of people, which is great because we are averaging over 200 attendees at these meetings now. But the tool that we use, it's fantastic because it allows us to ask questions about topics that we're wondering about, like how you use legacy currently, what you're looking for in new features, things that we really want feedback on. And it allows any of our users to provide that feedback. And so even if you're somebody that is going to be in legacy for a while, you'll still get to participate, you still get to provide your feedback. And then we always do a Q&A as well. We get a lot of really great questions and are able to answer quite a few of them. The product steering committee has a website itself. It links from the SERFF.com website. So that website has some information about the product steering committee. It also has previous meeting summaries on it. So if you want to see what we've talked about in the past, you can do so. And if you want to be added to the email list so you can get the agendas and information about these meetings, please contact that project email box. And we will get you added to the list. I think that is it. Yes, thanks everybody for attending. I'll now open up if there are any Q&A or if Bridget wants to add any other information.
Yeah, we will move into some Q&A. I would like to tell folks, I think the best way to organize this is you can put your question in the chat, and then Lauren and I will read those and answer them. And the other option is you can raise your hand in WebEx. If you go to the participants, you should have a little raise hand option there. It might be down at the bottom of your screen. See, there's mine. And so you can raise your hand and that'll display on our screens, and we will be able to call on you and hope to have some really good questions. So tee those up. Let's get some good Q&A going. And Lauren, while we are waiting for folks to do that, I am going to take a minute to talk about our migration to Okta, if that's okay.
Sure.
So if you are a SERFF user or you manage SERFF users, you are probably aware that we are moving the legacy platform to our single sign-on environment. Lauren mentioned our self-service. We put out a user management module in the new platform, and it already had single sign-on. So if you're using the new platform already, you are using Okta. That's the system that we use to manage user credentials. And we have decided to go ahead and move the legacy application to that as well. There are advantages for the NAIC. It's much more secure, also an advantage for you all. It does come with multi-factor authentication. And even though we don't always love having to do that, it does ensure that your data and your credentials are much more secure. And it will also help us as we go through that coexistence that Lauren talked about, where users might have to be in both systems for a while. It'll help us to build tools that will help you smoothly transition between the two. So in the end, it will result in one set of ID and password, and that is both for SERFF. But if you use other NAIC systems, such as SBS, internet filing, opt-ins, iSight, all of those are in this single sign-in environment. So you'll be able to transition more smoothly between those two systems. So we have completed the coding and we've built it to production with all of the necessary features for single sign-on. And now when you go into log into SERFF, you will see the old login button, and then to the right of that, you see a new button that says Okta Login. It's been out there for a while, and we've done a lot of messaging around that to try to get what we would call natural adoption, where people choose to use the new Okta login. But we don't have great adoption so far. Right now, I would say we've got about 40% of our users who are by choice using the Okta login. We would like to increase that without having too much disruption to the customers. We have not yet set a date for a hard cutover where you must use Okta, but that will be coming in probably before the end of the year. So my pitch to you is to please proactively go out there and attempt that Okta login. If you are unable to log in, because if you were set up a while back, there might be some things where your invitation to Okta expired and you need a little bit of help from us, and that's fine. We'll get you on our list. We'll get that corrected, and you'll be able to use the legacy login in the meantime. So you're not prevented from using SERFF because you've got that fallback plan. We're going to be doing some additional work. We're trying to find ways that we can encourage people maybe in batches to move over, but we're definitely sensitive to not disrupting our users from accessing SERFF and not putting an undue burden on our support teams that not only keep them from working on other things, but also delay you getting those answers. So you'll probably be seeing a lot of communication come out from us in the next couple of weeks about Okta, encouraging you to move, giving you additional instructions and prompting you. So we want everyone to please, make sure that you're watching for that. If you manage SERFF users, please help us communicate the importance of making that switch, because what we don't want to do is get to the point where we have to make that hard cutover and now people are unable to log into SERFF and do their normal functions. And we're gonna get to that point. I think when we get to somewhere around 70% of people have moved over, we will start with windows of time where Okta is the only login option. So if you're set up and you're good to go, you're going to be fine. But if you didn't take those steps, you won't be able to access the system. That might be 15 or 20 minutes to begin with, a little bit of a wake-up call, and then it might be an hour. And then we may extend from there. And again, that is going to be our way to kind of force those people who maybe are not looking at those emails or procrastinating a little bit on that setup to ping them to make sure that they get that done. So just wanted to do the shout out on that. You do have the project email that Lauren gave you. That is good for anything and everything related to SERFF. So if you don't have a help desk email, you can still reach out to us there. And we will be happy to assist you with that. So that's kind of my
Bridget?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, I was going to offer one other really nice benefit of using Okta in the legacy system is that if you manage multiple accounts or multiple instances with separate login IDs, you no longer have to log out and then log back in with that ID, because you can change your access to all of those IDs and instances just in the upper right-hand corner. It just makes it a lot easier to manage all those accounts.
Great one. And Nora's got maybe even a better one that he posted in the chat. The login time, that timeout is longer in Okta. I think it's an hour. And I think it's like 30 minutes in legacy. So if you've ever been logged out and frustrated that you lost some work, that's your incentive to get that Okta login, because you'll have a longer timeout. Thank you, Nora, for throwing that out there. That was good stuff. We have 2 more minutes, and I'll pause for a second to see if there are any questions. I don't see anything in chat yet. Oh, I do see one. When I try to log in with Okta, okay, Angela, email, you can do help@naic.org. Help@naic.org is the fastest one. Renee, would you mind throwing that in the chat? Mm-hmm. That's the fastest one, and they'll get you squared away. I don't see I don't see hands raised, and I don't see anything in the chat. So we still can go a couple minutes, but while we're waiting for you to frame up those really hard-hitting questions for Lauren today, and I will tell you, industry folks, the regulators did a lot better job yesterday. She got some good questions, so you guys need to up your game here on the industry call. But I want to make another plug for something that we have in SERFF modernization that I think you guys will be super happy about. And that is, we do have a self-service management module. We've started rolling this out. It is almost completely rolled out to our state users. So authorized users at the state can now create new users. You can deactivate your own users. You can change their roles and their settings in SERFF, and so you don't have to come to the help desk and you don't have to wait. You can do that all yourself. That's good for us, right? And now it's good for you because you don't have to wait. And we also have more time to focus on those harder questions. So we want to start rolling that out to the industry as well. We've started a little bit. We kind of got slowed down with some other work we needed to focus on. But if you are someone who manages your SERFF users and that is just like fireworks for you, please do contact us. Now, I'll ask that you do the SERFF modernization questions at NAIC.org. I know there's a lot of emails floating around, but that's the one. You can email us and be like, hey, I'd love to be in the self-service user management group. It's kind of in a pilot. Sign me up and we'll get you set up for that and we'll get you your instructions. So that will be my little plug on self-service because it's really great. We worked really hard on being able to put that in your hands and we're excited to give you that capability. Still no questions. I don't see any questions in chat and I don't see any hands raised. So we could probably like twiddle our thumbs for another 30 seconds just in case. And then
Bridget, I did just post the email address that you referenced in the chat as well, SERFF modernization questions at NAIC.org, if anyone wants to grab that real quick.
yeah,
It is
thank
a
you,
long
Renee.
one and it can be hard.